welcome to MonsterJam 6.2, Bitwig's extension for Maschine Jam. Now, I don't really make videos, so I don't have the greatest AV setup. I do apologize, it's going to be a little janky, especially when it comes time to hear something that's playing. Maschine Jam. Won't talk about it too much. If you have it, great. If you don't, there are other videos that review it. It's a great controller. I'm glad I have it. What is MonsterJam? Now, the way it was designed and built was incremental. I started with the things I really wanted, and I'm still adding features to it. See the link to the repo in the description for documentation, for new releases. Do keep in mind this is an experimental project, so bindings are likely to change. One thing that is worth pointing out as you read the documentation, there are a lot of key combinations in there. So when it says a button plus another button, the order in which you press them does matter. So like, for example, shift and select is not the same thing as select and then shift. So keep that in mind. On load, it's the usual stuff you are used to seeing in this kind of controller. There's a bunch of buttons, they're divided into sections. On the top, you have your scene buttons. Down below is the clip matrix, track buttons, touch strips, bottom row with transport and other things, your mode selector, D-pad for navigation. Now the buttons on the right don't do anything yet. Okay, so let's start with the simple stuff. Clear and duplicate work like you imagine they would. You hold clear down and it works on scenes, clips, and tracks. Hit anything that will just clear it out. For example, we can clear a scene, there we go. Also to point out, you can press shift and then this top row becomes the shift row and the buttons do what they say on the thing. So here's the undo. Duplicate will duplicate a scene, a track, or a clip. It works a little bit differently for clips in that you can select the source and then a target. And it just does that. Also, you can hold shift and hit duplicate and that doubles the content of currently selected clips. Now, how do you know which clips are currently selected? Well, you can look at the interface or you can hold down the shift button and it will show you in white whatever clip is currently selected, and you can also select clips like that. Additionally, if you hold the clip button down for a little bit and then let go, it will select that clip. Also, in addition to the top row with shift, there are some functions available on the second row. Currently there is just one. You can hide and unhide tracks. So here we have a hidden track. Let's just deactivate it and hit the first button on the second row, and it shows and hides it. Okay, note repeat just activates the fill mode. Very simple. The knob will control the playhead position, so it's just your regular shuttle knob. Okay, so let's talk about navigation. The clip matrix is a window into the large clip matrix that you see in the application. You can use the D-pad buttons to go by page, up and down, and you also see that when there's something to navigate to, the button will light up. And that's how you know. You can also hold shift and go by one. But wait, there is more. Check this out. If you hold shift button down, notice what happens to the scene buttons and to the track buttons. They become page navigation buttons. So, in addition to being able to navigate page by page, you can jump directly into any page, just like this. So in effect, with shift, we have direct access to 64 scenes and 64 tracks in 8 windows of 8x8 matrix. Now let's talk about groups. Groups traditionally have been a little bit painful in Bitwig, not with MonsterJam. So here we have a group track. You can see it as a group track because all of its clips are white. Now, any track that is a group track, you can double-click the track selector button. And then this happens. Ooh. It unfolds all the top-level tracks in Bitwig. You double-click it again, and it folds the tracks back up. It also does something rather interesting. So, if we are somewhere in the middle of a track list, and we do this, you notice it flashed around a little bit, but then it came back. What it does is it preserves the position of this track, and it doesn't jump around when the list of tracks changes to the left or to the right. But wait, there is more. If you press the track button and hold it down, notice the down D-pad is lit, which means you can enter a group, just like that. And now we've entered a group. To exit a group, you can press any of the track buttons that are group members, and you can hit the up button and you exit out of a group. It also works if your groups are nested. You can get in and out very quickly. But wait, there is even more. In addition to selecting pages directly with Shift, you can navigate directly to any track out of the first 64 tracks. If you hold the macro down, these buttons become your track buttons. So you'll notice the stop row currently corresponds to the track buttons down here because we are on the first page. But we can jump to any page, to any track immediately, just like this. Now let's talk about the bottom row. Simple stuff. The play button starts and stops playback. You can hit Shift play to rewind to the beginning. Recording toggles recording on and off. Toggle launcher record overdub by hitting Shift and then pressing record. Shift right toggles loop on and off. You'll also notice that the settings that are toggled when the Shift is pressed are visible when you hold the Shift down. So basically Shift calls up a control layer for all these things. In addition, auto button toggles automation on and off. Shift auto toggles automation overdub for launcher. You can also see that it's been set. Shift tempo taps tempo. Obviously, you can also press tempo button down, and then the encoder now becomes your tempo control. Grid is interesting. If you hold grid down, you'll notice the scene button row changes. And what this is launch quantization. So it goes 8, 4, 2, 1, and then it goes into fractions. So you can easily change it. You can also turn off launch quantization by just clicking on the thing that is lit. Solo, mute, and tempo are special in the sense that if you hold the button down and take your time to think about it, when you let go of the button, it deactivates the solo mode. So quick press toggles, long press deactivates. Also, if you hold the button down and operate any of these controls, the mode becomes momentary, meaning that you can quickly solo something and get back out of the solo mode just by holding the solo down and pressing the buttons and you're out. Mute, same thing. And you're out. Tempo works the same way. If you hold tempo and operate the control, then it disables the mode when you let go. It's also worth noting that there is an inverse to these modes. You can hold the track button down and then you can mute it, solo it, toggle record on and off. And of course, these settings are visible when you're holding the track button down. Now let's talk about super scenes. In Bitwig, you have scenes that are organized as rows of clips. So basically, you can launch a scene and it just launches the whole row. So if you want a different scene, you make a different combination of clips, which in Bitwig are always copies. You don't have ghost clips. A super scene enables any combination of clips to be launched as if it were a scene. To get into the super scene mode, we press the song button, and now the top row changes, and we get access to super scenes. One thing we forgot to talk about, how the clip launcher works. So pressing a clip launches it. Pretty simple. A playing clip will be lit slightly more brightly than the other clips. Now, the gem unfortunately doesn't have a huge range of colors and brightnesses it can display, but we try. When the clip is scheduled to launch, it will flash. You can press a playing clip to stop it. And when it's scheduled to stop, it will also flash. And it does it according to launch quantization. If you hit an empty space, it will start recording a new clip. Okay, so let's create a scene from this one playing clip, or super scene, I should say. To create a super scene, it's very simple. Have yourself a playing clip, and then just hit an empty scene button, and bam, a super scene is created. Let's create a new one. Let's start another clip. Bam, another super scene is created. We can go back to this one. Pressing on an existing scene starts it, and it stops all the other clips from playing. So we can go back and forth. And you can, of course, use the clear button to clear them, just like that. You can probably imagine the creative possibilities with this. It means you don't really have to duplicate your clips anymore. You can just have a handful of clips sitting where they need to sit and trigger them in any order that you like. Super scenes also have page navigation, so if you hold Shift down, it shows you your super scene pages. Currently, there's only one page with super scenes available, but we can choose any page to create scenes in them. So let's choose page 6. So now we're on page 6. We can create more scenes from currently playing clips. They're automatically rainbow colored for your pleasure. And now you see that we do have a page 6. Currently selected page is in white. Worth noting, regular scene navigation is still available, but now because the stop row is occupied, it has moved down to this row. Pretty convenient. This has now become this. We can navigate our scenes. Pretty cool. One thing to note about super scenes is they can only trigger things that are visible on the screen. That means that if you have a track inside a group and a clip on that track was playing, and then you fold the track and try to trigger the scene again, MonsterJam will not be able to do it. All it will be able to do is trigger the scene on the group that you just folded, so just keep that in mind. For everything else, you can move your tracks around. Once the group is unfolded and the track is visible, MonsterJam will be able to launch the clip. And yeah, super scenes are stored in your projects. Let's talk about the strips. Jam starts in level mode, and one thing you will immediately notice is that all the levels are at maximum. But if you look at Bitwig, you see that no, they're not at maximum. What is this magic? Well, the magic is that MonsterJam supports level limits on sliders, and the answer lies in preferences. If you go, you'll see this setting called limit level sliders. You can set it to none, and then it will work like your regular out-of-the-box Jam extension. But it has a few additional modes. You can set it to 0 dB, and then all the level sliders will max out at 0. You can set it to -10, or you can set it to Smart. And what Smart does is for any track that is a regular track, it will limit its top range at -10 dB. But for a group, it will limit its top range at 0 dB. While unlimited sliders can be useful for mixing, for performance, I really want to limit how loud I can make a particular track, avoid accidents, and give me some additional freedom to operate because these strips are very easy to accidentally touch. Aux button controls the sends, and also if you hold the aux button down, you see that this row now becomes your aux selector, so up to 8 effects tracks can be selected. So just sets the target for your sends. Control mode lets you control the parameters on your devices. Pretty straightforward. You have your remote control page on your selected instrument, and you can control its parameters. Also, Control has a way to navigate around devices, so by default, left and right buttons go back and forth between devices. So if you have multiple, you can just navigate down. If you hold Control button down, these buttons become page navigation, so you can navigate within your remote pages inside a device. Also, there is a user control mode built in. To access it, you can hit Control and then Macro, and now these strips become fully mappable user controllers. Also worth pointing out, when you hold down Macro, in addition to the track selector, it also calls up the user control. Once you've mapped your controls, you can, during your performance, very quickly jump in and do something and then jump back out. It's dark because it's not mapped to anything, but if I did, you would see it move. So very quick way to navigate back and forth. But of course, that's not all. In addition to navigating devices with these buttons, by default, when you hit Control, you will also see your clip matrix change into something like this. Now, what are these? These are device chains for each individual track, and the color indicates the type of a device. You can look at the manual on what the types of the devices mean, but obviously yellow is the instrument, orange is the effect, blue is a note effect, and so on and so forth. And you can also see that the current device is highlighted. So here you can press on any device button to immediately select its track and the device parameters in the control strip. You'll notice that it flashes only briefly, If you hold the control long enough, it will stick. Of course, if you do find this annoying and not useful, you can turn it off by holding control and just hitting select button, and then it will not do that anymore. Also to point out, direct device selector has scrolling, but it works a little differently than scrolling scene banks. Scrolling left and right works normally, but scrolling up and down only scrolls to things that are scrollable. Meaning, there are more devices down here that do not fit, so if I hit the down button, it shows me the next page of 8 top-level devices on that track, but the other ones haven't moved because there are no more devices to show. Also important to point out that all of the slider adjustments have a fine adjustment mode. You hold down Shift and move the slider, and it moves in small increments. And it also behaves like a relative control, where it doesn't matter where exactly you hit the strip. The display is a little annoying just because of how the dual indicators work, but yeah, small adjustments with Shift. Okay, finally, let's talk about perform effects. So if you've never used Maschine, what this is when you're controlling an effect, you're not only controlling a single parameter with your slider. The sliders are what's called dual touch, as in they sense when they're being touched in addition to where. So in perform effects mode, what Maschine does is it uses the touch to enable and disable effects. And with MonsterJam, the same thing is possible in Bitwig. To set it up is pretty simple. There's nothing really to do on MonsterJam. All you need to do, when you have a device where you want to have touch effects enabled, you create a control page called Monster Effects. And that's it. MonsterJam will treat it separately. This page will not be available for navigation. If you see, I can't navigate to it. In this page, you can have up to 8 controls, and they will correspond to the 8 touch strips. So whenever you touch it, MonsterJam will modulate the value from 0 to 1. So you could have it be a button, or you could make it a macro knob if you really wanted to, and it will work. So this goes from 0 to 1. And that's pretty much it. So you see you have dual controls. I'm controlling the delay here, and also just by touching and releasing, I'm controlling it. And here I'm modulating the on and off of the effect with my button. I can have perform effects anywhere on any device pretty easily. Finally, to touch on configuration, there's a few things you can set here. This first thing, pretty shift commands in Matrix, is something I've borrowed from Moss's integration. And in his, whenever you press the shift, the top row will light up in rainbow colors. I found it distracting, so it exists, but it's optional. You can turn it on or off if you want. One thing to point out, if you do enable it, it doesn't take effect immediately. You have to reload the extension. You do this either by deactivating and reactivating it here, or just switching to another project. Also, when you hit shift, you know how your track buttons become page selectors, which I don't think I've really demoed, but it kind of does this, right? So you can directly jump to any track page. If you don't like it, if you want your track buttons to stay put when you hit shift, you can turn that thing off. But it also requires a reload. Limit level sliders, we already covered. This setting enables Track Tracker. Track Tracker is an internal MonsterJam thing to follow tracks around as they're being moved, renamed, hidden, folded, and unfolded. And it uses some magic in order to follow a track around. It needs to modify it slightly, which means that if you open up a project and do nothing to it, you'll get a star next to its name, and Bitwig will tell you that the project has been modified, because it has in a very subtle way. If this is too annoying for you, you can turn Track Tracker off. Super scenes will stop being able to follow the tracks, so if you do change your track layout, it will launch wrong clips. And also, when you fold and unfold groups, it will not be able to scroll to the group that you just unfolded. So I see no reason not to keep it on, so it's always on for me. And finally, there's currently just one setting on the machine, and that is to hide and show disabled tracks. but it's also accessible through Shift second row first button, like that. And there it is, MonsterJam 6.2. While making this demo, I did find some bugs that I'm going to fix soon, so keep on the lookout for a new release. And just to summarize, MonsterJam lets you navigate very quickly around the project by giving you direct access to scene pages, track pages, tracks themselves, devices, lets you navigate groups. It has shift adjustments on all its control strips. One thing I did forget to mention is that when you're looking at a device and your device has a modulated value, and that's the reason these controls are in dual mode, is that the colored bar actually shows you the modulated value and the white dot shows you the currently set parameter value. Sometimes it's handy to see what your modulated parameters are doing. MonsterJam enables machine-like perform effects. It has modes for quickly jumping in and out of different control sections like user controls, your solo and mute. And there you have it. Thanks for watching.